For years, Fiji has been a gateway to and from Australia for Goway. Its abundance of pristine beaches, crystal clear waters and warm, welcoming culture have enchanted ancient explorers and modern-day Globetrotters with some of the world's most beautiful landscapes and rich cultural experiences. Goway's success over 55 years in creating memorable trips to Fiji could not have happened without the long partnership with the equally experienced local office of Rosies. Rosies and Roy Whitton grew this mum-and-pop outfit over 50 years to become Fiji's most awarded tourism operator.
Hey there everyone, I'm Don, Professor Goway, and welcome to the Goway Pro Travel Tale podcast. Travel far and travel often. Welcome everyone. I am here in Fiji, in Nadi, in Rosie's head office, and I'm literally surrounded by the history of Rosie's. And Rosie's are Goway's partner for Fiji. And today I'm speaking to the son of the founders.
Yes.
Tony Whitton.
Yes.
Bulla. Yeah, I should start with that. Bulla. So we're in Fiji. Yeah, we're in Fiji. Bulla, of course. Is it Whitton or Whiten?
Whitton.
So
yes.
Tony Whitton. So as we are sitting in the Rosie Gallery, which is basically, as I look behind me, from where it started in 1974, I believe. So you just mentioned that you turned 50 last year as a company, and Goway is turning 55 this year. So we're both celebrating some milestones. But can you walk us through, I guess, how Rosie started? I know it's written on the wall here, but for everyone listening and watching, how did Rosie start, and why did it start, I guess?
Well, Don, first of all, thank you. Welcome to the Rosie Gallery. This is perhaps Fiji's only real living travel museum that celebrates the progression of the tourism industry here in the Fiji Islands. And it marks the start of our journey. It started in 1974, and we celebrated our 50th anniversary last year. And the story of Rosie is two extraordinary people. My mother, Rosie Whitton, who her father was Chinese, her mother was Fijian. Okay. And she was a single mom when she had me. She was in the capital, which is about 300 kilometers from where we are here at Nadi International Airport. And she grew up in the village. And in the 60s, Fiji was under British administration, and we were going through some economic difficulties. It's obviously the British Empire had been coming out of World War II. And so she's in the capital trying to make ends meet, and someone tells her, Rosie, there is something happening in Nadi. And of course, if you're from the capital, you say to yourself, nothing good can ever happen in Nadi, the cowboy town.
Really?
So
there's a bit of jealousy between Suva and Nadi?
Well, we're very rural.
Yes,
we're very rural here, very agricultural.
Okay.
And those that were in the capital would look at this as really like a very rural agricultural area, which was the sugarcane belt.
Okay.
And so a lot of our sugarcane industry actually came from this belt. And that's about 220 kilometers away from the capital. But anyway, her friend told my mother, Rosie, she said, listen, there's something extraordinary happening in Nadi. And I know it's hard to believe, but there are these big ships that are falling out of the sky, that are landing here, and people are coming out, and a lot of people are finding jobs there. So Mum thought to herself, this is a tremendous opportunity to find employment. And so she, with a lot of our extended families, we have a lot of relationships in the village. And so Mum left with my grandmother in the village, took this journey in the early 60s, and came to Nadi. And of course, what Mum didn't realize that she was part of this amazing industry that was just starting. That coincidentally perhaps started in 1939 when the New Zealanders came here and built a small runway here in Nadi. And
So is that where the airport was established?
is established now.
Through New Zealand?
New Zealand.
Was that because of the war, or was that just because
of the war?
Because of the war.
But it was a very small landing strip.
Yeah, of course, yes.
You had the advent of Pearl Harbor,
Mm-hmm.
and then the Americans came in quite a large way.
Oh, you had a presence of Americans?
Big American presence here.
Okay.
And they extended the runway, which would allow some reasonably large aircraft to land.
Sure.
So the genesis of the Fiji tourism industry is that landing field. And then so my mum came here. She saw people working because Fiji was primarily a refueling stop because the technology of planes that were available in those days. So if you're traveling from Los Angeles, you could not, the aviation technology was not available there for direct flights all the way to Sydney or to Auckland.
Right.
And so you would have to fly Los Angeles, Hawaii, Nandi for refueling, and then Nandi on the way to Sydney or Melbourne or Auckland.
Wherever you're going, yeah.
Wherever you are. So, and so she comes here and she meets my father, Roy Whitton, who was the Qantas manager.
Oh, he was?
So Qantas was providing the managerial assistance and all the services and the skills because we didn't have the skills at the time. And so Qantas was primarily running the ground services, all the aviation, all the catering.
Right.
And she came, they fell in love. And
where's your father from originally? Was he Fijian?
He's from Melbourne.
Oh, he's an Australian.
So he's an Australian, yes. Okay. So he's an ex-World War II vet. Served in, seconded to the British Navy, obviously, when under World War II.
Yeah.
The Australians were under the
my grandfather was in the Merchant Navy for Australia.
Yeah, yeah. And so he primarily was a flagsman, running food supplies into Asia for the British troops that were there, and then some longer ones into the Middle East and other locations. But so it was this romance that started, and then my dad Roy came to the village, brought me back here, and so I basically grew up in a tourism and hospitality business. And so Mum was working for a ground operator here called Hunts of the Pacific, which is the largest ground operator here. That's where she learned a lot of her skills from ground operation. Dad was the Qantas manager, and it would not be unusual when we would have our family dinners and Mum would ask Dad, what happened at work today? And Dad would say, well, I met Frank Sinatra, or I met Elizabeth Taylor, and I met Dean Martin. And because all those people on the way to Australia would have to refuel here. So it was a wonderful era looking back.
Yeah, for sure.
And they then had this vision to start a small tour company in 1974. And I think going through Mum's mind is what drove her was this genuine belief that tourism has the power to lift every single Fijian out of poverty. And it manifested, it was a reality in her life when she took that journey from the capital to Nandi. And that really became the driving force and one of the reasons why they wanted to start a small tour company in 1974 with 2 drivers based at the airport. Dad took an early retirement from Qantas and started with 2 drivers. I didn't know growing up in our family business then we would have struggles meeting payroll. Some of the drivers, I remember Shiri Chand and Moon Sami and some of those early, would say, listen, I realize we probably can't get paid this week, but if there's some tourists that come next week, maybe we can take them on a tour. And so that's a company that started in 1974 with 2 employees. Now, fast forward 50 years later, we have close to 700 employees. We are the largest tourism hospitality locally owned in Fiji. We're 100% Fijian family owned. And it's been this wonderful story, but what drives even us and what our why and why we wake up in the morning is that we continue to share this belief that tourism has the power to lift every single Fijian out of poverty, to improve their social, economic, and environmental well-being. And we are so blessed to have this amazing industry that we can participate in. And Don, to really understand how vulnerable South Pacific island economies are, you just have to look at our land mass and to see our location and to see our greatest resource is the South Pacific Ocean. But we are very vulnerable. We don't have large land mass. We don't have large access to minerals. And so tourism and hospitality is the way that we, with a small economy like Fiji, that's about 7 billion USD, that's our GDP, US dollars, 7 billion. It's not a lot.
No.
And how do you have close to 900,000 people? How do you sustain their lives? How do you make sure you give them opportunities? How do you make sure we can educate their children? And so tourism is the backbone of our economy here, because tourism is what we call the service industry. And so we have this wonderful story, a small, vulnerable South Pacific island, and we welcome last year almost 1 million international visitors.
Really?
Who welcomed to our shores. And in that process, in the 50 years since we've been established and since the industry has continued to develop, close to 40% of all our GDP, tourism is the single largest service industry that brings us the largest level of foreign exchange. So you came from Canada a few days ago. When you came, you would have bought in Canadian dollars. You would have purchased an air ticket from our national airline. The Reserve Bank grabs all that Canadian dollars, and the US dollars, and the Australian dollars, and New Zealand dollars, and we use that foreign currency to help us build our roads, to be able to build our hospitals, to improve our communication, and to really give every Fijian an amazing opportunity to be able to improve their lives. And that's on this amazing industry called tourism that we feel so blessed to participate in.
Yeah, and I think there's a strong parallel in your beliefs, i.e. you being Rosie's, and Bruce Hodge, the owner of Goway, that you have very similar philosophies about tourism. And Bruce has brought his company again from yours was literally a mum and pop shop. Your mother and father starting it. Bruce did it on his own with his assistance with his wife. But yeah, he's of a very similar mindset that tourism will uplift the travellers as well as the countries in which those travellers visit, just through the cross-pollination of knowledge and experiences, but also of course, the financial investments that a traveller does when they're visiting. Beyond tourism, what is Fiji's biggest export or strength? Because you mentioned there are no sort of minerals here, or would it be agriculture?
Number one foreign exchange earner is the tourism dollar.
Right.
The number two is local Fijians offshore sending money back. So we have a lot of our Fijians serving in the British military. We have one of our Fijians, and they're very talented. They're in various parts of the world, either serving in medicine, research, commerce, and they still have family here, so they remit money back to the villages.
And the family unit, I've discovered, is very, very tight here in Fiji. Like you mentioned, villages, but the families. I did the Sikatoka safari yesterday, visited a village, and the head of the village there explained a lot of it and how it's very intertwined, integral to the Fijians' person, who they are. So on that note, I visited the Cook Islands a couple of years ago, and there was a similar example of a lot of the Cook Islanders work and in New Zealand, and money comes back in. Is there a similar connection between Fiji and New Zealand, or is it more Fiji and Australia, or there isn't that sort of strong connection?
The Cook Islands is, I believe, a protective territory of New Zealand, so they have a direct connection.
Right. Okay.
We received our independence from the British 1971, but we have strong connections to the Commonwealth. So
Yes,
New Zealand,
British Commonwealth,
Australia, And so a lot of that foreign remittances is just coming back from the diaspora all over. We have a very big Fijian community in Canada.
Yes.
Big Fijian community in the US. So if you look at tourism as number one, so that's say it's about 2 billion remittances. 1 billion is foreign remittances, and then the number 3 is what you're holding in your hand over there, which is Fiji water. And that's an amazing export, an amazing story that really promotes the pristineness of our islands, and it's a major export. And then we start having things like sugar and fisheries and mining underneath that.
So just to be clear, because there was, well, it still goes on, there's a lot of controversy, or in other words, that bottled water is tap water, etc. But this is from Fiji, so when someone is buying this in North America, it is true Fijian water, correct?
100% Fijian. Okay. We have a Fiji water factory that's about 200 kilometers from where we are here. The magical thing about that is this massive water reserve that's trickled through hundreds of kilometers of volcanic rock to be able to grab those reserves. And so, so that's 100% true blue Fijian. So I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Yeah, I am. Really, I like that. So you've mentioned a few times Fiji, the island, but Fiji is more than just one island. It's 33 islands, is that correct?
Over 330 islands.
Oh, 330. Okay.
In low tide, but high tide, that probably comes about to 180 or something.
Right, okay, fair enough. Okay. Now, most people, when they fly to Fiji, will come into Nadi Airport, which is where we're probably, 10 kilometres away from as we sit here. The name of this island is?
This is Viti Levu. So we primarily have 2 large islands. Yep. And then we have a disbursement of little tiny provincial islands that make up it. So we have the Mamanutha group of islands, we have the Asau group of islands, we have the Lau group, the Lomai Viti group. And that's one of the beautiful aspects, is the pristine nature, how spread we are, and how diverse we are. So you went to a village yesterday, Singatoka River Safari, which is an amazing
it was.
Product with high-speed boats that go into the interior. But we also have 5% of all our visit arrivals come here for scuba diving.
I noticed that on the plane, there are lots of people with lots of big crates of scuba gear. Yeah, all their kit.
So we're famous for our scuba diving. We have some of the best soft coral in the globe. We also have some of the best surf sites.
That was the other thing. There was 2 or 3 families coming down with all their surfboards out of Los Angeles.
So so if you're a diver and you want that experience, we're available. If you're a surfer and you want some of the top 3 surf locations in the globe, if you want to just come and just have a relaxing break, if you want to come and experience adventure, our company runs 4-wheel drive safaris now into the highlands. Okay. You just see the diversity of Fiji. So we've got the marine component with our beautiful reefs and beautiful oceans and the beautiful surfs, and then we've got these massive areas of dry forest, and the phenomenal thing is, even when you go into these locations, we still have indigenous Fijian villages that are still there, that have been like that for centuries, and it's actually quite a unique situation where, I'm not sure whether there are too many parts in the globe where you could get into one of our 4-wheel drive coaches, or you could get into Singatoka River Safaris, a jet boat to take you right into the hinterlands. And you're literally going into an indigenous Fijian village where there is a chief, there is a landowning unit, there are people that are still subsistent off the land, and still living off rivers. And to be able to really enjoy that and in a real way, and it's not choreographed, it's not made in a studio, it's living everyday people. And to be able to then go back to your resort and enjoy the comforts of being in some beautiful resorts.
Well, that's what I enjoyed about the trip yesterday at Singatoka is, yes, and I did a bit of background research on the company that set it up. Yes, these villages are expecting you. They're now, so I guess, somewhat used to tourists coming in. But and I've done a lot of these cultural interactions or family stays, for want of a better term. And luckily, most of them are still pretty natural. And to your point, this was. It was natural, and I like the way they do it, that each village gets a portion of the visits, and then it moves on to other villages, so it's spread as wide as a net can be spread amongst the area. And yeah, the people and myself, it was wonderful. It was authentic, and it was friendly, which I've also noticed. Like islanders, as I grew up knowing the Maori, the Fijians, and the Tongans, and through rugby, which I know is a very big thing here, have a reputation of being very, very friendly. And I've been blown away with how friendly, excuse me, Fiji is. And it's not just because of the tourism aspect. It just seems to come out of the Fijians that it's just a very welcoming destination. Is that a cultural thing? Is it done because of tourism? I don't think it is done because of tourism. I'm just asking the question.
Sure.
It seems like it's just who the Fijians are.
So I think you've really touched on what is a really unique aspect of the Fiji story. So if you look at our Fiji tagline, what we first started with, come to Fiji where happiness, to come and find happiness, where happiness will find you.
Right.
And then we've advanced that to come to Fiji where you'll find happiness naturally. And I think one of the unique aspects that makes our tourism industry real and authentic is that 90% of all the land is owned by the ancestral resource owners.
Okay.
And so our Rosie holidays, we also have our own resorts, Malola Island and Liku Liku. Liku Liku is a 5-star couples only. Malola Island is a 4-star, both award-winning resorts.
Wow.
Family. But our resorts are on ancestral land. And in our case, it's Yarrow Village. And we lease the land from them. And 90% of all the land. And so primarily the majority of all the prime land where a lot of the resorts are located are on indigenous tribal owned land. And part of that arrangement is we lease the land for 99 years. We pay a percentage of all gross sales to the resource owners. We give them first right of employment. We give them participation in profit sharing. And so if you're an indigenous owner, you actually feel that this is an industry that's been able to partner with them, that they still own the resource, partnering with a developer that has this amazing dream to develop and through that partnership, they participate in it. So they don't feel isolated, they don't feel marginalized. And these ownership rights are enshrined in our constitution. They're part of our indigenous framework. And so Fijians feel very, very secure in their story, in their culture, and how they want to share it to the world because they're also benefiting in terms of their economic, social, and environmental development. And so one of the interesting things about tourism, there's this argument, tourism destroys cultures. Fiji is the complete opposite. It's actually embraced the cultures where a lot of ancient dances are now slowly being able to be recreated and brought back. We are now being able to help the indigenous Fijians with environmental well-being. And so, for example, our businesses have the Uhuru Resort Conservation Foundation. It's a charitable trust. Last year, through our resort donations, we managed to raise close to over $300,000. That money goes back into reforestation of some of the lost lands, putting star reef systems back so they can start getting their reefs back because of global warming. We protect some of the endemic species like the iguanas. And so you see this complete reversal where the tourism dollar is now being able to reverse some of the impacts of climate change that we are seeing here. And being able to use that tourism dollar to restore these communities back to their original setting.
Do you think, or was there a danger of the Fijian culture being not lost per se, but pushed down just through natural, with becoming part of the British Crown? Yes, you won your independence, of course, but you just mentioned the culture is rebounding. So I'm just wondering, was it not rebound? Was it being suppressed in any way prior to?
No, the British administration were actually very thoughtful in how they colonized our countries, because they kept our indigenous languages alive. Fiji is broken into 3 super states, 3 confederacies, and we have 54 different provinces. So all those structures were kept, and the fact that they still allowed 90% of all the land to remain in indigenous resource ownership is an amazing testimony to their impact on our economies. I think where the risk of culture is vanishing hasn't happened here, because we don't have mass tourism, but it's areas where if you're living out in a village and you're doing these ancient tribal dances, after a while you have to be given an incentive to be able to retain those, because it's what's the reason, and is it when you're installing a new chief, you get those dances out, and so there's so many of our dance theater groups now that are going into some of these locations now, trying to find the last remnants of that generation that can at least remember some of these special carvings, remember these special dancing, remember how they weaved sails for their outriggers, to start retaining some of that, because a lot of that is actually dying, not because of tourism. It's just dying because there's no real enthusiasm to maintain it. Because we're all humans. At the end of the day.
So there's a conscious effort by the Fijian government to keep that aspect alive.
Absolutely. And there's the Big Fiji Made project. But a lot of our dance theater groups, the ones that are here, actually realize that their story is, when they start telling that this is an ancient dance, that we had to go to a remote village and ask the chief for their permission to do it. It's a wonderful story, right?
Oh yeah, 100%.
It's a wonderful story. So.
Because I was speaking to someone, Sean Marsh from Te Puia in Rotorua the other day, about the Maori culture and how I've seen from the outside, basically New Zealand has embraced the Maori culture, and it's now part and parcel of who a modern New Zealander is, white or Maori. And I've also just seen in my short time here that there's definitely a Fijian culture. I was just curious to know. Well, you've basically answered the question, that it is being protected and saved more so from the outer islands, where there's less interaction, I guess, with the modern world or modern tourism. So on that note, when someone is visiting Fiji, they're going to hit, Nandi, Suva will be the big ones. Is there should people look beyond the 2 main islands? Should they be looking up to the Mamanukas and other areas?
So if we look at the basic profile of, say, a Canadian visitor or a visitor from the US, which is primarily your markets, we find their patterns are they would perhaps come into Nandi, maybe spend 1 or 2 nights here, and then they would definitely go to the outer islands. So they would go to the Mamanu, the group of islands. For example, Liku Liku, the North American market is the largest market. For our couples only with the overwater bungalows,
right?
And so we'd encourage them to go out to these remote locations, and so you can enjoy a whole series of resorts that are about 30, 50, 60 kilometers outside of the main islands, and then to actually see where those resorts are established, visit the indigenous resource owners that still have villages there. So that's a wonderful story. We also have accommodated cruising, so you could venture out into the Asawas, small ship, 30, 40 cabins through the Asawa group of islands, and then into the Lao group. We also have the northern islands, Vunua Levu and Savu and Taviuni. That's about an hour's domestic flight out of here, where you can go and enjoy some of the best coral scuba diving in the globe. We've got the Sunshine Coast, which is about 200 kilometers from where we are near the Raki area. Some wonderful resorts there, some beautiful diving there. And then, of course, we've got our safari lodges and some of the indigenous owned homestay products that are literally in the highlands of the Big Islands, where you can actually go live like a Fijian for a week, and to be able to participate and be able to enjoy that living culture.
So to get around all the island groups, you mentioned domestic air. I assume that's Fiji Air is the one that would be the main
Yes, the Fiji
connector.
Airways link, the Fiji link.
And you also mentioned you can cruise around the islands.
Yes.
Okay.
A Blue Lagoon cruise, Captain Cook.
Right. So these are all like
Small ship.
small ship cruising.
That's right.
Okay. Do you have ferry services that connect islands? Like a
Yes.
straight
So
transfer, so to
the
speak?
Mamanudas with Malol Island and Liku Liku where we are, we have a catamaran service. So you can actually go by catamaran. You can go by helicopter. So the catamarans take about an hour and a half or so.
Mhm.
Or you can go by helicopter. This takes about 20 minutes. And they're trying to activate now to get back some of our seaplanes. So we have a whole range. So you've got the high-speed catamarans, you've got the helicopters, you've got the seaplanes, and of course then you've got the private chartered speedboats that you can charter.
So basically getting around the islands is easy.
Exactly, and Goway packages all that.
Yeah, of course,
You have this one-stop shop with Goway partnering with us, and then we package the whole thing from the airport welcome, ground transportation, the launch of the helicopter. We coordinate all that and get you safely back to the airport.
Okay. So what's the average North American? How much time are they spending in Fiji and the greater surrounds?
5.5 to 7 days.
Really? Just a week?
Yeah, just a week. Particularly out of the US, they have very short.
Well, again, yeah, they only have generally 2 weeks paid leave.
And the Canadians are probably a bit longer, maybe about 10 nights or something.
Yes, that's the usual pattern.
And it's a combination where a lot of people are combining Australia and New Zealand with the stopover in Fiji.
Yeah.
And if you're talking to our guests at Liku Liku, we find that there seems to be this natural, at least of late, of combining Liku Liku with, say, with Queenstown. That kind of combination is an affluent combination. So people are doing that. We have honeymooners that just come here for a destination holiday. So if they're on a honeymoon, and so out of the US, we'd have some of the major brands. Goway is one of them, where you'd be selling 7-night honeymoon programs into Fiji. Right.
So putting you in the corner here, why would someone consider Fiji over, say, Tahiti or the Cooks? What's your selling point?
What's our selling point? Yeah. I think we have a very advanced international airline that's 5-star Skytrax rated. So Fiji Airways multi-award.
I just flew it in. That was fantastic.
A350s, brand new aircraft. So we've got access out of Dallas. We've got access out of Los Angeles. We've got access out of San Francisco. We've got access out of Vancouver.
Vancouver, yeah.
So if you look at the North American market, you've got state-of-the-art A350s, modern planes, straight into Nandi, humping into Nandi. So access is very, very important. The second aspect is, I think that we have the diversity. So you can come here for 100 Canadian dollars a night or 5,000 Canadian dollars a night.
Yeah.
With $1 million. So we have this diversity. Some of the products that you mentioned there have a very just top end.
Yes.
Whereas we have this diversity, and particularly for the Canadian market, you want that choice. So you can enjoy a beautiful little shack on the beach, about $100 Canadian a night, or be able to enjoy some of the best 5-star resort luxury experiences in the world. So you have that diversity, you have that choice. You can come, you can surf, you can come and scuba dive, you can go to the highlands, you can come and relax, you can do what you just did in terms. So we have a lot of activities. So part of coming to Fiji is just not the resort product, but it's all this range of activities, from venturing out into the highlands, venturing out to indigenous villages, going out for scuba diving, surfing at Cloudbreak. So we promote this massive diversity of product. And then I get back to the wonderful story where the indigenous resource owners own 90% of the land, and participating in the land and realizing that they have this wonderful story to share about their land that they want to share with the people, understanding that the very people with the tourism dollars circulating to various levels of the community, that they have the opportunity to educate their children. They have the opportunity through the tourism dollar to improve their water supply, to improve their electricity supply, to help preserve their oceans and to restore their dry forest. And so this is this wonderful story. If you have a look at, when I'll show you, take you tour of our complex here, but you'll see this big tagline: every 11 visitors that Rosie meets at Nandi Airport provides one full-time job to a Fijian somewhere and 2 other jobs indirectly. So that's the message we tell our drivers. And just in case you're thinking you're not changing the world, just realize that when you're at Nandi International Airport and there's a group from Goway that's come in, and there's 11 of them there, and you're in your 22-seater taken to a resort somewhere. Just remember that day, one person
Who's being
has been
employed.
able to put food on the table directly because of what you're doing, what
Yeah.
Goway's doing. 2 other people indirectly because they've been able to either sell fish or sell an entrance fee to a village or sell some local produce and mangoes to a resort. And that's this wonderful story, isn't it?
Oh, it is, and I think it's key and it's commendable that, as you mentioned, that if you're traveling with Goway and intern Rosies, your money is literally going back into the local economies, because there are too many places where it's not, which is the thing. And as I'm looking above your shoulder here on the information board in the gallery, I just noticed during COVID you shut down like everyone else did for a couple of years, but you didn't stop. You were helping the locals. So can you just talk to how you got through COVID?
Sure.
Because again, as tourism is so vital here, like that must have really hurt Fiji with the lockdowns.
It was a really great test for our country. So you think about, so 2 things happened. It came out of nowhere. It moved so quick because we kind of heard the virus was starting, and then in 3 weeks' time, our airports were closed. And then you say to yourself, you're a vulnerable South Pacific island with the airport closed, no foreign reserves coming in. How are you going to sustain yourself? And again, it was an interesting model because we had about 700 employees that literally overnight we paid them 50% of their salaries for the first 1 or 2 weeks or 4 weeks, then 25% of their salaries, and then after a while there was no more salaries. What did those 700 people do? Majority of them went back to their tribal ancestral land. So if they had apartments here that they couldn't sustain, about half of them went back to their villages. And when you go back to the village, you still have prawns. You still can go and fish. You can still plant taro. You've still got mangoes and guavas and a few things that are there. So you've been able to sustain your livelihood that are there. So that's, again, this wonderful story of what happens when you have a resource, a valuable resource that you can go back and fall back on. We didn't have job keepers. I think that's what the Australians called it, where government kept some of the pay going to various people.
Canada had had similar
we
resources,
didn't have that. So the only source of income that our employees would have was their superannuation. So we have a compulsory superannuation here called the Fiji National Provident Fund. Everyone has to compulsory contribute about, say, 15% as a percentage of every dollar has to go to this super fund. And the government allowed, generally there are very strict fences around how you could access those super funds because they're primarily for your retirement. So there are a lot of rules, but they allowed you to withdraw some dollars to be able to just maintain some of your survival. And then the Reserve Bank, what they did, they kept $1 billion worth of reserves that we had to borrow from some of the international communities to basically ensure that our health systems were never compromised, our security border controls were never compromised, that we still had our police force, our military borders, and to keep the law and order. And so all those entities continue to get full pay. But like with everything else in Fiji, it's very communal. So they were still getting full pay. So if you're in a border control or you're in a hospital, you were still getting your full money. But you were also sending money back
to your village,
to tourism people that were in the villages.
Right.
Because we're all part of this
big family. Yeah.
And it was over 2 years, and we came through it we
survived.
We survived. And then we also had a very amazing national airline. And Andre, our CEO, he continued to work with Tourism Fiji and the various hotels, basically a plan to say, listen, once we get to what we call ground zero is when we will open the airports, these were the various protocols that we needed. You need to be sure that you're double vaccinated. You need to be sure that you do your tests. And so we were the first international country in the world to open its borders to international visitors
Really?
that were prepared to come. And we started first with Australia. 1st December 2021.
Well, I didn't know that. Okay.
So I don't know when you opened your borders for Canadian to start to travel.
It's all been such a blur.
But I think, for example, so the Australians knew that, so we were either going to die from the virus or we were going to die from a lack of economic activity. Australia realized the importance of tourism, so they worked hand in hand with us to slowly start bringing Australians in on 1st December to come and travel and start enjoying the resorts here. And so we had to slowly start to reopen. We opened our first resort, Malala Island, on the 14th of December, I recall. So we needed 2 weeks to get our act together. And then a few months later, we opened Liku Liku. So we staged our opening. But it was this wonderful story of this amazing partnership between our national airline, the people of Fiji, Tourism Fiji, the resort owners, to be able to start getting our people back to employment.
And I assume Fiji's bounced back since then. Like everything's back to normal. If not
2
more.
years, 2 years of just record growth.
Well, nice, excellent.
Unprecedented growth.
Okay. So on some fun stuff, just prior to flying out here, I watched, it just came on the TV, it's one of my favourite films, Castaway. And I thought, hang on, I'm sure that island is in Fiji. And it is, it's just 10-minute flight from here, I
from
believe.
where our resort is at Liku Liku, it's about a 20-minute boat ride.
Oh, okay. Now, I believe there's a resort on it now.
No, it's uninhabited.
Oh, it is still uninhabited?
Yes.
I could have sworn I read, so it is as it was, as it was.
And so you go there, there's a fee that we pay to the resource owners, but you literally go there to actually see the actual site where Wilson was, where Tom Hanks did those experiences. Yeah, so you can, and so that's preserved.
So it's like a day tour, a half-day tour?
Exactly.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah.
And from the North American side of things, because I know there's different versions around the world, but it seems that Survivor has set up shop in Fiji. It seems to be doing all its episodes down here. Is that filmed nearby, or is that?
So that's filmed on Mana Island. So again, that's in the Mamanudas. So,
okay.
So and Survivor literally take over that resort, Mana Island, for about 6 months of the year.
Oh, so it's on an
island
inhabited resort. Okay,
that's right, called Mana Island. And they lease that for about 6 months. They use that as their film studios, and then they have various programs where they will go out and so, for example, part of our resort, we also have an uninhabited island called Mordiu, which is Honeymoon Island. Mm-hmm. So we lease that island back to Survivor when they want to have one of those remote episodes where they put some of their team members out in these remote locations.
Right.
So they hire some of our island products.
All right. So Rose is involved in part of the production of Survivor.
No, I just want to just congratulate Goway for celebrating their 55th year of operation.
When did Goway and Rosie's connect? When did you start business together? Do you remember?
Probably in 78 or 80.
So not long after you started, not long after we started.
I remember when Bruce Hodge came here, and Bruce is very dear friends to my mother, Roy and Rosie. And I have been, we value that relationship, and I'm very grateful to my relationship with Bruce and Claire, and now Bronwyn and Adam, and then now the next generation, and to see the vision he had for Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific, and to be actually one of the first tour companies to start operating programs into this part of the world. And when we started our company in 1974, visit arrivals were 134,000 in 1974. So now we're approaching 1 million.
Right, yeah.
And so we've just been very impressed with how Goway has expanded into the USA and has continued that mantra of being able to share and believing in the South Pacific story. And we're delighted to be partners with the Hodge family.
Well, we're more on behalf of Bruce. We're like it's mutual. You know, the partnership has lasted almost 50 years, so that's something in itself. And the South Pacific to Goway still remains, even though Europe is probably one of our busy departments now, the South Pacific is still like the backbone and core to Goway. And our successes, you know, caused us some issues in a branding point of view, because most people in North America know us as South Pacific, whereas we now do everywhere, Europe, Latin America, Africa. But because of the footprint that Goway made through Bruce and Claire's years of hard work, you know, that footprint is still, many people look at us as South Pacific. And obviously Fiji was one of those big steps, literal from, as you mentioned before, North America getting to Australia and New Zealand. It was via Fiji. So on that note, Tony, I'd like to thank you for your time today.
Probably one more message.
Oh yeah, please do.
That's all right.
Please.
Just for your listeners, from the Canadian market and the US market, that I know are a very critical part of your clientele, and if you often wonder what does it mean when you come to Fiji and you bring the tourism dollar here, just really realizing that you are making the world better, because it's through the tourism dollar that we have been able to use the tourism dollar to improve the social, economic, and environmental well-being of some of these remote communities like we have here in Fiji. And so if you're talking about how can we improve the world, realizing that the tourism dollar is an amazing force for good.
100%.
You are helping put food on the table in everyday Fijians. You're helping us with our conservation programs to restore dry forest and plant new coral beds and restore iguanas and so many of the works that we do. And it's all because of your contribution and the value that we see in the tourism dollar improving the lives of every Fijian. So to all your listeners, we're thankful for believing in tourism and for partnering with us and helping us build our economies here.
We appreciate that. Thank you. And you got to come to Fiji. It's amazing. And everything Tony has mentioned makes the trip more than worthwhile, from financial to your own personal experiences and what you'll take away from these wonderful islands and the wonderful welcome you get here. So again, thank you, Tony, very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Nothing, Don. Thank you.